Hello everyone, welcome to a more chill episode of Fire Emblem Ignorant Dawn, because today is when we start doing unit analyses. We're going to do the Greil Mercenaries today, and then next time, tomorrow, or whenever the next episode is, we're going to do the other Part 3 units that we have to analyze from Part 3. Normally I do these during the Let's Play itself, like whenever we recruit a new unit, we just talk about them for a little bit, but I thought to keep the pacing of the episodes up a little bit, we're going to do them separately and just see how people like that. So let me know in the comments how much you like that. Of course, I can't talk for this long on my own. I gotta have someone to analyze with. So joining me once again is Original Raisins. How are you doing?
Doing excellently, Mekkah. Thank you so much again for having me on for the series. And I, too, am looking forward to... It's probably going to be like an hour or two of unit analysis.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think
it's a lot of characters in this stretch.
Yeah, I think last time we managed to do like 2 stretches of 1.5 hour-ish of units. I don't know. I think the Greil Mercenaries... they're interesting, but I don't know if we can do full 2 hours for all of these. We'll see. I definitely want to make this all in one video though, so I'll probably make the title like analyzing all the Greil Mercenaries in 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 42 seconds or something like that.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, and I'll just look like a fool for even suggesting the possibility of 2 hours, right? So yeah, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah. So this is the 3 prologue save that I made. This is where we started off before we knew who was gonna die and who wasn't gonna die, who was gonna make it to part 4. As of recording, we're at 4 prologue, but we're gonna analyze them based on both what we know and what we've seen, and just talk a little bit about how good they are, what they're useful for, what they're not very good at, some funny things we've noticed about them. Just standard unit analysis, no tier list or anything like that. Hopefully, I'll have the growth at the bottom of the screen. I have some transfers, some incorrect transfers from Path of Radiance. There's some unit stats are slightly boosted because we played Path of Radiance beforehand. I'll try to mention that when it's applicable. I think Raisins has Oifi pulled up with all the bases and growth of each unit, so hopefully won't make too many errors with that. We'll see. So how about we get into things?
Yes, let's.
With our best buddy Ike. I like to usually start unit analysis like this with, especially for the Greil Mercenaries, with like what are the unit's strong points, what are their weak points. Cool thing with Ike is he can't really be classified that way because he has no weak points. He just has a couple strong points, and then some things that he's like middling at worst. But generally, Ike is just really freaking good at combat. No doubt about it, especially when he's transferred. This Ike, I think he has strength and speed and skill transferred, if not entirely mistaken. And that makes him even more of a beast than he usually is. But generally speaking, Ike is borderline to comfortably doubling, has massive strength, has the ability to wield swords strong enough to just 2-hit KO anything. Early on, he has the personal Etherd, which is just a really strong sword. It's about as strong as a steel blade, but more accurate, just better all around. And then later on, you get the Ragnell for 1-2 range, which makes him really good for part 4 as well. He's just one of the most reliable combat units in existence. He doesn't really have flaws. He has like things that he's like maybe a little bit below average at, like his resistance isn't perfect. He doesn't have flyer mobility, but he's still more mobile than most of your units. And honestly, he's more mobile than some of your mounted units at times. And he has no great 1-2 range because he doesn't get wind. You don't get the forged wind edges, unlike you get the forged hand axes and javelins. But he still gets the Ragnell later on, so even that problem is solved. So Ike is one of the most perfect units all around. The only thing, like, I think there's 1, maybe 2 units in this game that could possibly be considered better than him, being Soth and Har. Har used to be considered about equal, whereas now I think most people agree that Har is better. Whereas Soth is really just an argument of like, do the Dawn Brigade need him more than this team needs Ike? But the fact that they're even being compared to begin with shows you just how good Ike is, I think. So yeah, we like Ike, right?
Yeah, no, he is a really strong combat unit, and you did get the transfers right. I think this one is strength speed. And I will say that like the transfers are helping out his case a little bit. Without them, he has like kind of a slightly shaky start, and like he can't double a couple enemies. But here's the thing, like you get 1 speed growth or you get 1 strength growth, which is really easy to do. And then now he is just like actually totally off the races. Like 25 speed is enough to double pretty much everything in part 3. People say his promotion comes late. Really, his promotion kind of comes in like 3-11 when he gets the Ragnell.
Yeah,
I think that's actually a more important boost to his combat capability than the promotion stats are, which is insane because the promotion is like +2 all stats. But he gets that, and now he's like really activated as a combat unit. He can really just kind of go ye forth and kill everything, and that really is his role, especially in late part 4. I think in part 4 he ends up being one of the people who can just kind of like take on 1 million people, soak up a ton of XP. His Earth Affinity really helps with that. There's always tricks of like save your Ike with Soren, I think that's a bit overkill. I think the Savior is maybe slightly better placed in that kind of trick, but at the end of the day, it's still, his Earth Affinity does allow him to take on just a tremendous number of enemies and then kill all of them with the Ragnoll, and that's kind of like a part 4 strat. As far as his part 3 performance goes, yeah, he is like really strong at that one range combat, which is still an important role. He can use the Eddard for it. And just a note about the Eddard, by the way, so you get this, and then in 3-4, you get another Eddard. I have never, ever in my entire life, even when trying, been able to break both Eddards, so just like spam them, basically, right? Like, I've never been able to break both of them.
Yeah, the only reason not to use the Eddard is like if you want to use a Brave Sword instead, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Or Wormslayer, I don't know.
Speaking of which, that is a pretty good thing to bring up. I do know that some of the shipments that people like to bring from the Dawn Brigade for Ike is, in fact, as you mentioned, the Brave Sword. It really does help with a couple of like really shaky kills that Ike has some difficulty performing. Like one of them I know is the boss of 3-4. That same map I was mentioning where you get the Eddard. That boss is actually like kind of difficult to crack through very quickly without a Brave Sword. And so a lot of people enjoy sending the Brave Sword over to the Greil Mercs for that. So if you're not planning on using Z-Hark, or honestly, even if you are using Z-Hark, just sending over the Brave Sword is kind of handy, because I think Ike and the Greil Mercenaries generally use that weapon better than the Dawn Brigade does. So that's just overall what Ike is very capable of. And then, of course, there's still some shipments from the Dawn Brigade that can help him do even better with that. And I do think it is worth to ship from the Dawn Brigade over, because I think after the point of shipment, the Dawn Brigade maps are few and straightforward, whereas the Greil Mercenary maps are many and there's a lot of stuff going on.
I'm not going to spoil exactly what happened in my part 3 map, but if I look at my part 3 Dawn Brigade, it does not look good like that. Just like,
I mean, we got to the end of it,
it
right?
worked out. It worked out in the end.
Worked.
I'm just not saying it went without a hitch. Let me just put it this way, Raisins. Do you agree that the Brave Sword was pretty damn important for the Dawn Brigade in this run?
Okay, it was pretty handy, you're right. So.
That's all I'm saying. It was... I don't know if I could have done it without it. Like the reason I personally like the Brave Sword on the Dawn Brigade is because, yeah, you can like wreck things with Ike with the Brave Sword, but if you don't, what's the worst that can happen? You take another turn to beat 3-4. Like, oh no. I mean, I'll just feed the kill to like another unit at some point. Mm-hmm. If you're playing efficiently, I can definitely see it. It's just I don't know if I would recommend it to casual players, because I think it's nicer to have those kind of tools on the Dawn Brigade.
I can see it, yeah.
Because their worst cases, like, we die, whereas the Greil Mercs' worst case is usually we have to take an extra turn because someone missed or something like that. Mm-hmm. There was something else I wanted to mention because of what you said. Oh, yeah, it's Earth Affinity. I agree with you that Savior doesn't really... It's fine, but I think there's better units within the Greil Mercs, and I also think there's an argument for keeping it in Dawn Brigade as well, rather than putting it on Ike, because the reason I think Earth is so good is because it gives you a ton of avoid, right? So what you want to do with it is make units self-sufficient, so they just dodge reliably enough to where you can expose them. And for Ike, he doesn't really need it that much, because as long as he has A support, he's fine. But usually you should pair him with a unit that needs a little bit more help, but that's still capable enough on their own. So I usually use Mia, because her tier 3 with an Earth Affinity of support from Ike is so good and dodge that she can do it. I'm hoping Boyd can go through the same ways what I've chosen this run. And I think if you have two units next to each other, both with an Earth support that just wreck everything, that's great. That's how you clear out part 4 maps quickly, efficiently, and without having to take forever beating all the reinforcements. And if you have Ike Savior or someone instead, you're just taking a unit off the map that could have helped contributing, and instead of that, you could have had someone else use that Savior trick to better effect. Like, I don't know, Titania, I think, we're going to talk about in a minute, could use something like that to a much better extent. So I agree with you that Savior Ike, you can do it, but I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, for sure.
Alright, well, I think we're kind of through on Ike, and if we're going to take 9 minutes to talk about everyone, we're going to be here for a while, so let's talk about Titania.
There you go.
Titania is one of my favorite units in the Greil Mercs, but you wouldn't know it if you looked at my death counters, because boy, have I gotten killed a couple times. Titania definitely has flaws, unlike Ike. One of them being low base HP, the other one being, speed that needs a little bit of help. It's not unsalvageable, but it's like hard level where she needs a little bit more than what she has in order to double comfortably. And then in some maps, her mobility is bad. Most maps, her mobility is good, but in maps where it's bad, it's really bad. I'm talking about maps with a bunch of ledges, like 3-4, and maps with a bunch of swamp, like 3-7. In those maps, Titania, not quite useless. She can really contribute for something, but once something is done, there's just nothing she can do, and that kind of sucks. But on the contrast, there's a bunch of maps where Titania has more mobility than most units, so I don't want to harp on it too much. There's a lot of maps where Titania can move as far as Har or even further. And if she has the bulk to survive, the speed to double, then everything is just going to die because her strength is massive. She has axes, which are the best weapon type in the game. At some point, you can forge them to be even stronger. But even before you can, just being able to just put Titania out there, give her a hand axe, and wreck everything is super good. Nothing wrong with it. But you do got to do something about her problems. Be it a speed transfer. I think she has one here. I don't think her base speed is 21. I think her base speed is actually...
She does have a speed transfer in the screenshot.
Yeah. I think that's her only transfer. Her Path of Radiance stats are not good enough to cap anything else, I don't believe. But something else she really appreciates is some kind of boost to her bulk. And what I often do is the Savior trick. I have her build a support with Mist, who has a water affinity. So at A support, that gives +2 defense as well as +2 attack, which she doesn't always need, but maybe she needs it to two-shot a general or something while doubling them. So, and you have her Savior Mist, and she's pretty fine. Of course, it does mean that her skills are pretty locked up, and it means that her support is pretty locked up. But if you're willing to go through that, then she is more survivable. Another way to fix it would just be to give her an Angelic Robe. Going from 36 to 43 HP alone is going to be a massive difference. And yeah, if you don't have a speed transfer, then a speed wing could be appreciated. A quick promotion could be appreciated, like Crown Titania is a pretty common strategy. And those are just things that help her over the bump. And I think that sums up pretty good why Titania is like an A tier or an S minus tier unit, whereas some other units like Ike, I think, would rate as S plus or best units in the game or whatever, because they don't need all that fixing. They can just get even more broken by giving them resources. But Titania definitely needs something to become an absolute juggernaut, but she can still get there, and that's why I still rate her very highly. And she's still super useful and versatile with rescue drops and high movement 1-2 range. You can't really go wrong with that, but she needs some help, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of interesting you bring up Crown Titania, because I think Titania is the unit in the Greil Mercenaries who kind of like needs it the least. Especially, it maybe be different if Haru didn't exist, because Haru joins at like level, I think, what is this, like 11 or 12 or something. It's not something high enough to Crown, and he's, in my opinion, a better Crown candidate. I guess you're just not using him. But Titania is so close to level 21 that even doing stuff like putting a little bit of bonus XP into her, or just doing regular combat, can usually get her to 21 pretty reasonably, around like 3-4 or 3-5 if you're really trying. It's like not terrifically difficult to get her to that point.
Yeah, I can see
and
that.
Because of that, I think
it's been a while since I've been able to get Titania that far, I'll be honest, and I've been purposely neglecting Har in a lot of playthroughs to avoid him taking over the playthrough, but you're probably right that she is less optimal than most people, honestly, in that regard, because she can get there naturally, right?
Yeah. And I want to be open-minded to the different ways that people can use Har, depending on how much they want to take over the game. I will say, so you said like it's been a while since you've got that far. Does she like just keep dying on you, or?
Well, so usually I don't always play hard mode. Sometimes I play normal mode, and then the game is just completely different. In those cases, you can usually Bex Titania to promotion, which is an entirely different thing to get her. That doesn't really happen on hard mode. And then, yeah. I mean, she died in my last Iron Man, and no spoilers, but she probably died in this one too. Yeah. Since we're talking about her this way. So it's been a while since I've seen Titania actually hit level 21, but thinking about it, I do agree with you that she probably is more natural to promote. I think Crown probably makes sense if she's somehow like not promoted by 3-3, and you just really want to promote her specifically, or you just want to promote someone, then I think she's an okay candidate. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of characters that we're going to talk about in the future here that also want that crown. So with that in mind, maybe I should have been a little bit less positive about Titania, thinking about it. Like Titania crowning specifically.
Yeah, it's okay if you want to do it and like get away with it straight away. I will say it's kind of interesting you bring up she keeps dying, because I was going to say she's like one of these weird units who like her stats are good enough that you're going to allocate her important jobs, but they're bad enough that she sometimes fails those important jobs. In, like,
I have a lot of faith in her, especially because of Path of Radiance, and that faith can be deadly.
Oh yeah, no, it's kind of crazy. I will say, so Titania can show up in like 3 Fog of War maps with the Greil Mercs, and in every single one of those Fog of War maps is a general with a horse's lair somewhere in there, just like ready to take her out in one hit. So just like be ready for that. Check the stat screen every now and then. It's kind of a funny thing. But no, she's all right. I do think she really needs the speed transfer. 23 speed, which is how much she'd have at base plus promo, is like not enough ever, basically. She really does benefit from any kind of speed help you can get her.
Yeah, you do get 3 speed wings spread over this game, but one of them is very late, so either you got to transfer like the Dawn Brigade Speedwing, or I think the Grillmarks get one from part 2, I think. Yeah, you get the one from part 2, and you give that to the Grillmarks. That's also an option. So basically, they're taking someone else's Speedwing at some point, because I think all the Speedwings come from other places, right? Because like you get one in 2.3, you get one in like 1E, and you get one in 3.9, which is also at a Crimean chapter. That's funny, I never realized that. But hey, Titania's from Crimea, so it makes sense that you give her one of those Speedwings.
There you go. Yeah, no, she's great. I don't want to go on about this too long because we did just have the debate about the Brave Sword, but this is the other unit in the Grill Mercs for whom I like giving the Brave Sword. When she promotes, she gets C rank swords, and it's apparently enough to use Brave in this game.
Oh, I didn't know that. I never tried. I feel like by the time... No, actually, she promotes fairly early, so you could do it. I just feel like Titania can reach 2-shot levels without the Brave Sword. So, like, the Steel Pole actually has right now, like, 2-shots almost everything in the game, I feel like. Besides maybe Generals, but then the Hammer exists.
Maybe I want, like, 0% brain. So.
Maybe you just really like Brave Sword.
I just really like it at the Grill Mercs. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't want to spend too much time on the point because we already had that debate.
That's fair. I mean, you know, Titania without resources is just like 2-shotting things and not doubling, which is not great. But if you do want to double, there you go. There's the resources it takes. Okay, let's go on to Soren. And Soren is a unit we did not use this playthrough, but I have used him in I think my previous playthrough and maybe even my playthrough before it. And generally, the way I treat Soren is he's got a lot of flaws that you have to work around very delicately because he can just straight up die if you use him wrong. His base HP is very low at 28, and then the defense is only 9. And he faces crit from a lot of enemies because this is something we haven't mentioned yet. Part 3 enemies are all tier 2 or higher, I guess. And that means that they all have a little bit of innate crit because they're swordmasters, halberdiers, snipers, etc. And that means that Soren can just get blicked instantly if you place him wrong. But fortunately, he doesn't take counters because he's a mage. Unfortunately, that means he's a mage in a Telius game, which means smaller defense res gap, which means he does less damage than he would in like a GBA game. And his movement is kind of bad compared to other units, and his stats just kind of don't work out. Particularly speed is a problem for him. You can see right here is 18 speed. We already were like pretty disappointed in Titania's speed, and she had 21. So like without transfers, and we said she needed help, so Soren needs a lot of help to get there. He doesn't take counters, but if you can only attack once per turn in a game where you were generally expected to enemy phase a lot, that's not enough. You can turn Soren into a Juggernaut. It just takes either a lot of time, a lot of grinding, a lot of resources, or a combination of all of them. One thing I like to do is give him a support with Ike. Soren has the Dark Affinity, so that gives a Void by itself, and then Earth gives a bunch of a Void. I think at A support, that's got to be like 20-something a Void at least, which is...
Yeah, 30 avoid to attack.
Yeah, 2 attack is nice as well, of course, for both of them. But the avoid really gets him there. Makes him dodgy enough to where he can like kind of beat things. It's really important to get into tier 3 as well, I feel like, because then he gets Flare, plus his promotion bonuses and staves for staff utility as well. So Soren is one of the characters I would recommend crowning. Maybe even at level 10, if he's hit that by the time you get the first crown, because then you can turn into a staff bot. If you happen to lose your staff units in an Iron Man, like I think I did, then he's like your only option. I think Raisins mentioned it a couple times during the playthrough. Like, hey, can we use Soren for stabs maybe? I was like, well, he's like base level. Like, it's kind of hard to get him there. But I've done it before, and it's a good idea. I don't think it was for this playthrough, but in general, I think it's something worth considering if you're Iron Man in this game to turn Soren into a staff bot. He does have really good magic to work along with it, and staff grinding in this game is not super difficult because I think the staffs give like a reasonable amount of weapon experience each, and you can also, if you really want to, you can staff grind on enemy phase by having him bonk staff with the staff on enemy phase to get staff XP that way, which is, it's really ineffective combat-wise, but it works for weapon XP grinding at least. And then, I don't know, he's just kind of nice. I mean, sages have all sorts of problems in this game, but Soren can overcome them with enough help. I just think you can use Soren just fine, even in a hard mode playthrough that's like pretty hardcore, but you probably can't use Soren and Boyd and Gatrie and Mia and Shinon. Like, you can't really use them all and expect them all to catch up. You have to pick your battles and choose like a few to give him the resources you have. If you do that, Soren can be one of those units and you can turn out fine, but it's kind of risky. And the other drawback of using the Soren Ike support that I almost forgot to mention is that you do eventually have to fight Ike with the Dawn Brigade, and Soren is right next to him when you do that, so they will have a support bonus, so you have to play around that. You can play around it with parity, for example, but you just got to keep it in mind, and if you don't have the resources to play around it, maybe it's not the support you want to do for that playthrough, but that's like micromanagement. You can generally get away with it, though. Those are my thoughts.
One regarding the Soren Ike support, one thing I've done in more than one playthrough is actually get them to Soren Ike A and then cancel the support, just completely erase it, and then just rebuild it. Like you can usually get it to C support at the start of 3E, and then sometimes get it to like B support at the end of 3E, and that's like okay. But at that point, it's like, okay, now I'm doing all of this just to kind of like micromanage this unit, who can give me some decent help in part 3 and then some decent help in part 4. But to be honest, I mean, Ike is like so powerful in part 4 that, you know, so be it. Just do whatever you want. I think really it'll work out at that point. As you said, with Ike support really is benefiting Soren more than Soren's is benefiting Ike. And so, kind of speaking of Soren, he does have a lot of issues, as you mentioned. I do think like at base, this Elwind tome that he has equipped, I mean, 29 attack, 143 hit, is like pretty reliable chip, which is never really high praise in my mind. It's like, whoa, he can do chip damage. It's like useful, and he's free to deploy sometimes, so that's like fine and okay. But his speed really is just like god awful. He starts out with this adept skill that I pretty much always remove the adept skill immediately and put it on someone better, like Titania, or maybe even on Ike, or maybe even on Horror, just anybody really, usually Titania. Just because like they all kind of use this skill better. They can steal some kills with it. There's some people that maybe they have shaky doubling rates on. Whereas Soren, like, okay, even if he doubles, he's still not killing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, or I think you put this on Mia, and that's also really, or was it Mia or was it Shinon?
It was
either one are good.
I've sometimes put it on Shinon as well, but I think Mia is one of the best uses for it because I like it on units that can double but not 2-hit KO, and Soren is neither of those.
Yeah, Soren is like, he can't 2-hit KO, he can't 3-hit KO, he can't double. I mean, like, okay, 3-hit KO is maybe a bit like much. He can probably 3-hit KO some people with that Elwyn.
Yeah, he's not terrible. Like, I do think he deserves some credit for the fact that he's around for free in the early part 3. There's no real deployment cost for him for the first 3 or 4 maps, I want to say. Like, even when you get other units, he can still be arguably one of the better ones. And you do need all the firepower you can get early on in, like, 3-1, especially.
I do think this is a very reasonable deploy. So, and speaking on the stabs, you said he's a good candidate for insta promo. Absolutely, to be honest. The moment he hits 10, if you plan to promote him with a crown, I think get him a crown. Just getting the stabs as quickly as possible, getting the promotion gains as quickly as possible. I won't lie, I'm usually disappointed with Soren when that happens, but you know, you could say, oh, Raisins, just get him to 21-21 and then he's really good. Yeah, I don't know any unit for whom that isn't true, but like, I think just activating Soren's Archsage with his stabs and with his flare and with his stat boost as quickly as possible, even if that ends up falling off, I think that's very important for Soren to continue contributing, because frankly, as a Wind Sage, I just don't think he does much past his, joining maps.
Yeah, the only other way you could make him work is he is kind of close to capping Sage stats, which says less about Soren having good bases and more just about Sage caps being bad. But if you can reach those in tier 2, then you have an opportunity to like use bonus experience to improve someone's weaker stats. This is a little shaky because, for example, his speed, you would think that's a good way to fix his speed, but his Sage cap his tier 2 speed cap is just not very good either way, so he still needs the crown eventually to start gaining speed again. That's like the thing he needs the most. But that's like one way to maybe get some HP or defense, but it definitely takes more effort to make him good that way than it does to just promote him and then have him heal and be a contributor that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So yeah, Soren. There we go. That's what we think of Soren. Let's move on to Mist. I guess one thing we haven't really mentioned at this point, which we might as well now, is that staff utility in general in Radiant Dawn is, I think, weaker than it is in most games. Vulneraries are very powerful. They heal 20 per use rather than the 10 in most games. You get concoctions, which heal 30, I believe, if not 40, right?
They heal 40. Yeah, 40 with 6 uses.
Yes, the amount of uses is really nice as well. Plus, like, large inventory spaces. And some units, the best units are also, like, good at just fighting on enemy phase. They don't need to... Their actions not as much on player phase. It's nice to have them occasionally, but it's not strictly necessary for them to function very well. Har can just fly around the map, for example, and if he's, like, semi-low, just use a Vulner or Concoction and he's fine again. So that makes healers less of a turn saver, and I mean turn saver as in, like, making sure another unit has another action because they don't have to heal themselves. That is less valuable for Radiant Dawn, and that makes Mist and the other healer, Rhys, I think, quite a bit worse. I don't think Mist is absolutely terrible, but if you look at their stats, I wouldn't blame you for thinking so, because, I mean, I feel like every the way we scroll down the list, it has a little worse stats than the last one. Mist, I think, has the worst in like all around. Like none of her stats are even above 20 besides HP, which is really, really terrible. There's like several enemies in part 2 that just part 3 that just straight up one round her. Some even wanted to KO her, I believe. It's just, you have to be really careful when you're using Mist. Her one saving grace is, I think, that she can use Physic while having 7 move, so there's like quite a bit of flexibility where you place her, and she can just heal someone up if they're injured without having to get close to combat, which is really, really helpful. She also has the florets, which, funnily enough, it says it uses magic for direct and indirect attacks, but it doesn't. So I think almost every Radiant Dawn mod that ever exists just changes this to make it work as clearly intended. But the fact of the matter is it uses strength, which means it uses 8 strength, which is like lower than half the Dawn Brigade at base, which is super embarrassing. So it's a good sword. Other than that, like it's like Ragnar level powerful almost, with 14 might and 95 hit and 1 to range.
It's attached to Mist, so
yeah, but it is attached to Mist, so you can't really do a whole lot with it. At least it makes funny BM kills with her viable because she doesn't instantly get murked if she somehow does fail to kill. But it is very difficult to get her kills. Generally, I would recommend using only healing. The other funny thing with Mist is that she has a personal promotion item that she doesn't need in the English version, but it's fun that she has it. It does mean you cannot crown her normally, I don't believe, in part 3.
I think you can crown her normally.
You can crown her normally in part 3? Oh, that's funny. Because she gets...
So.
Well, I guess jury's still out on that one. Someone fact check me in the comments, or, you know...
Yeah.
I don't know. But she does
I know you can 21 her, so...
Yeah, that's what I was getting to, is you can 21 her. She has a base level of 1 though, so you really don't want to have to 21 her, and she probably will be near that point by the time you get the Holy Crown anyway, which is her personal promotion item. You get that in, I think, 4-4, or before 4-4. You can use that on her so that she can move further. Fortunately, that map introduces ledges for Ike's part, so you can make sure she cannot get up on ledges. You can promote her between ledges to make sure she can never go anywhere. It's very funny.
That's right. I always do it every time.
You gotta do it. You gotta do it. So, but it's still nice to have a mounted healer if you can get one. I think on the easier difficulties, when it's viable for Mist to reach level 21 and promote normally like that way, or if you can crown her, it's nice to have the option of a mounted healer, but usually she's not going to be the best crown candidate. Like, you can only get like 2 reasonably early crowns in the Greil Mercs, if that. So you don't really want to spend one on Mist. This is a unit that should almost never see combat, and like I said, healing is not that good. I have gotten a lot of mileage out of having Physic on her. I'll give her credit for that. That has definitely been helpful sometimes. But God help her if she ever faces combat. She is so scary to use. But I do like her.
Yeah. It's the flurry is kind of, I mean, it's her best weapon, right? It's not saying much.
Easily, I've never put anything else on her.
Yeah, no, they give you the opportunity to buy a second one for 9,000 gold, and the number of screenshots I've seen with a late game Mist who has 2 florets still, is like, I wonder really if this was worth it. Like, I talked about the Eddard being hard to use with the Eddard. That's on a unit who can like tank enemies and always doubles and like devours 1,000,000 guys, and the Florite has what, like 45 uses on a unit who can not double and has to like find really crappy kills from 2 range. I don't think you're gonna run out of this. There's probably no need to buy it. You mentioned it like was clearly intended to use magic, but I actually think that this magic word that they used in this is just a mistranslation. In Japanese, it's like attacks with a shockwave, or it's the same word that the Wind Edge uses. So I think this is more so a mistranslation than a lack of developer
Yeah, do you
intent.
think it's a mistranslation?
Yeah, no, much better, much better. You kind of mentioned staffers being a bit weak, and I do generally agree. One thing you can do to augment that is in part 2, if you have a moment that's convenient, try and have one of Heather, Braum, Nephany, or Har steal the physics staff off of Valencia. Just because that, if that staff is on Valencia,
I think we did that for this playthrough, right? That's how we got our physic.
I think we did, yeah. It's, there may not be a convenient moment to do so as you're playing 2E, but if there is a convenient moment to do so, then it's probably wise to do, because otherwise that physics staff is doing nothing until like 4-2, right? I guess actually you could grab it in 3E, but at the end of the day, still, like, it's kind of a nice steal, and then it activates 2 units to do much more than they could normally do. Otherwise, it's fine. She's just basically staff flunky. Yeah, she theoretically could promote to horse. Yeah, she theoretically could hit people with, you know, like Blessed Flurry and whatnot. But, like, I mean, really? Come on. Again, we're kind of getting into, like, anybody could do that territory. It's fun. If you enjoy doing that, by all means, please do it. But it's kind of hard to be like, yes, this is why Mist is an excellent unit. When, I don't know. She's just kind of got that. She has the water affinity, like you mentioned. That's neat, actually.
Yeah, true. That is one great use for her. There's like other units with water affinity, but I think Mist is the fastest support with Titania, which is why I use her for that purpose.
Yeah, it's a really good move.
Right, let's because I think we're kind of done with Mist, right?
Yeah, there's really not much else to say. What are we going to talk about? Like innate miracle? Get out of here.
All right, Rolf, another unit that we haven't used this playthrough, but I think I've used him before, maybe even in hard mode run. Not entirely sure on that. He is not the best sniper in this part, but he is viable. You can train him for sure. He's got a really good strength growth. He can turn out really, really well. It just takes a while. You can see his 19 speed. We already know that's not up to par with the benchmarks we've discussed before. We know Ike is shaky. We know Titania is really shaky. And we know that Soren was very slow. Soren at 18. So Rolf's speed is not good enough to double for a long time. So this is another one of those units you just got to pour a lot of favoritism into. He's also only level 1, just like Mist. So even if you wanted to crown him, it takes 9 levels before he's even able to use it. And in hard mode, that can be a little bit harder to reach. So, and even if you could crown him, I'm not sure if you wanted to. I think this is one of the units where if you're committed to using Rolf, you're probably not having a super serious LTC speedrun mega efficiency thing going on. So just take your time, try to like raise him slowly, and then once you get to late part 3, you can probably use like bonus experience to augment his weaker stats and make him good that way. And then you can still enjoy part 3 and part 4 with a reasonably powerful marksman. I have gained some respect for Shinon in this game with a trick I'll probably go over later again. That involves using Shade and a crossbow on your sniper, and then putting Provoke on a more bulky unit that protects them a little bit. I think that makes him a bit better in the route maps of this game because they don't get in the way as much. I'm not sure if it will work as well for Rolf because Rolf's bulk is much worse than Shinon's, so I think he might still get attacked by enemies sometimes despite Shade and Provoke trying to prevent that. But that could be fun. And, you know, Marksman is a fun class. It gets 3 range, it gets Deadeye, which, I mean, every class gets a mastery, but I think Deadeye is especially funny for some reason. And then you get the double bow in the end game, which is super good. And I think that's really what you got to keep in mind for when you're using Rolf, is when you're suffering through all these like kills you got to set up is, I'm doing this so I can have fun with this character in endgame. Because before that, you're just going to be raising another kind of Rebecca, Walt, Namey kind of unit, you know. Not someone who's very good, but just someone you feel like using. That's how I would treat Rolf. And he has the triangle attack, another very important part of his utility. You can make Rolf and Boyd and Oscar do a triangle attack for a guaranteed hit and crit. That is also very funny. Those are the kind of things that keep me living while using Rolf. The Rolf's bow also is not his personal weapon. It's just a slightly weaker steel bow. I don't really like the Rolf bow very much. It's not very good.
Like, I mean, it gives a lot of weapon EXP.
Wow. I'm glad. I'm glad.
I know. Yeah, oh yeah, it's really handy, I guess.
I think he got some from Path of Radiance, to be fair, but damn.
Yeah, all of these weapon ranks are like kind of weird because this run didn't transfer anything for Rolf, right? Like, why is his weapon rank there? Is that a transfer?
I don't know. I think you get some no matter what from Path of Radiance, as long as, but he has like a base E rank bows in maybe he has D rank bows in Path of Radiance. I think you get some if you're above like E rank. You get some.
Yeah, I mean, like
this file's kind of scuffed anyway. I don't know for sure.
Like when does bow rank ever matter? Like
I think Rolf actually. Maybe this is from my RMM where I did use Rolf. Maybe that's what happened. Because this is the wrong save, remember? Maybe that's what happened.
This is the wrong save. Yeah, he normally has B rank bows at base. But like again, when does that ever like come up?
Yeah, because Silver is B in this game, right?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Let me pull it up.
I mean, either way, his best bow is a forged steel bow. Like, no questions asked.
Yeah, Silver's A and Silencer is A. Oh no. I mean, I guess like you could theoretically be gated out of the Silencer, but like just do some math with forging and you'll make a better bow. So
basically, I've said everything I need to say about Rolf. So what about you?
Yeah, I mean, he has a pretty good strength growth. That's about it. Like, I'm really struggling to come up with things to say about Rolf. Again, like if you're training him up, then you're already committed to training him up, right? So I don't think anything that anyone can say is going to sway you one way or another on that. Like the act of training him is itself the fun part of that. He gets to the end, and yeah, he has the double bow. It's super awesome. I don't really think skill investment does a whole lot on this unit. I mean, what are you going to do? Like put a proc skill like Adept on him? He's gonna proc Adept and then still not kill. Yeah. So it doesn't really seem to be that good in that regard. Just kind of like he does have really good growths. So if you're really keen on using Rolf, just kind of like give him ton of levels, and then from there he'll be in some mystery zone where we don't know where the stats are going to look like, and then just kind of play it from there. I think like at that point you have like the world's unique Rolf that is yours only. So
a unique copy to enhance the playing experience, or however that meme goes. I think
that's right.
he will cap stats in tier 2 eventually. He has like 19 levels in tier 2, and after like 10 or so he will probably at least cap strength and maybe skill or something like that probably, and then you can go from there with bonus experience to get the other stats up higher. He's not gonna have terrible endgame things. And also, like, again, the early game of Greil Mercenaries, you don't have much of a choice. You're probably gonna have to use Rolf. He has like this unique role as a sniper that can use a ballista in 3 prologue, and then in 3-1 you know, you're gonna need someone to chip some things down, or like bait a sniper over a wall, stuff like that. He can do. It's fine. It's not amazing, but it's there.
Whom does he bond support?
Use a lot of them actually, I think.
Yeah, bond support Shinon is like the most useful thing Rolf does, like for basically all of my playthroughs. I gotta say, just like I put him next to him, and then Shinon gets like extra crit and extra dodge over the wall.
Yeah, it's like 5 or 10 points, right? It's not negligible.
I think so. It's like just a small amount that exists.
Yeah, you can get more from Path of Brains as well if you support him, but I think most of the units who support the Path of Brains actually aren't around right now, so it's not gonna help too much. Or it's like Mist, who's like, yeah, yay, crit for Mist.
Whoa.
Oh well, we can move on to the next one if you want.
Yeah, let's move on.
All right, Boyd, one of our favorites
boy.
here for sure. Boyd is a unit I've definitely been enjoying using in this playthrough and in Path of Brains as well. He does not have the best start, but he is a unit you can make very good, and it's not super difficult to do so, but it definitely takes some like blood, sweat, and tears to get there. Like I said before, you have room for these in almost any playthrough if you want. If you go slow enough, you can train as many as you want. If you want to go slightly faster, you still have room to train someone like Boyd, but you don't have room to train someone like Boyd, someone like Rolf, and someone like Mist, and someone like Soren. Like, you gotta pick a little bit. You gotta make some choices here, but Boyd is a very fun choice because his strength turns out humongous. It's not the best in the Greil Mercenaries, even at base. I think he is like on par with Ike and Gatrie, if not a little bit below them. I think Shinon also gives him a run for his money, especially because Shinon doubles, obviously. That's the main problem with Boyd, is just he doesn't double. His base speed is 18. It's the same as Soren. It's awful. It sucks. He was really close to capping speed for me in Path of Radiance, so this could have been a 20 speed Boyd, but we got unlucky, didn't proc speed, and there we go. Now we have the 18 speed hole to dig out of. Boyd can cap some stats in tier 2 to get some bonus experience. It takes him a while to get there, though. His base level of 8 is actually kind of high for that purpose. You'd almost prefer if it was lower for that purpose, so he can like cap more stats. Because I don't think you should crown Boyd. I think this is definitely a unit that is worth making so good that he contributes in part 4, because if you can get him doubling, he's gonna like 2-hit KO everything. He has a really good strength stat in the long term. He used forged steel axes, forged hand axes to just murderize everything. His HP is gonna get so big that it's gonna be hard for him to get KO'd. I like giving him Ike support like I've done in this playthrough, to give him some earth support, and then the fire affinity gives him even more attack and more hits, because accuracy is also a bit of an issue for him. And it just goes off, but until he gets there, he's a unit that hits once, kind of hard, might miss, might get in some trouble, might even get doubled by some enemies, might even get crit by some enemies, so you gotta be a little bit careful, but you just gotta get him to tier 3, and then he's pretty much good for there. I think one thing you can do with Boyd, if you have him still be bad in like part 4, but you want him to be good for endgame, you can do the funny crossbow beast foe thing, send him to Tibarn's route, have him kill the goose that way. That can be one way to have a last minute training arc for Boyd.
Oh, true, like 4-5.
Yeah, but if you can, try to make him good before part 4, because having a unit that can double with hammers especially is just super, super nice. Or just forged steel axes. Like I like his long term. Transfers, if you can get a speed transfer though, that's really, really, really nice for him. He really needs all the speed he can get. But yeah, if you can get there, great units. And triangle attack memes are there as well, of course, but Boyd doesn't need triangle attack memes to be relevant. He just needs resources, a lot of resources. There you go. That's my thoughts on Boyd.
Yeah, no, he is a pretty good unit in that regard. Like, as far as part 4 carries go, I do like in particular the Reaver promotion that he has like extra skill capacity. So you can actually fit a bunch of skill combos onto Boyd that you can't fit onto other people. It does give him this kind of really unique role later on in the game. I do kind of agree that his speed is really an issue. Like, he has bad base and he has bad growth. It's like kind of the combination of everything all at once.
Yeah. Oh,
and
I almost forgot to mention, we had our base speed Boyd in like 311 or something. He had like 18 speed for the longest time.
Yeah, for the
He never
longest time,
grew
it
it.
was like, because remember that time in Path of Radiance? I think we were getting his 20th level, and we were all like waiting with bated breath
Yeah.
to see if he would get it. Yeah, whatever the last level he got speed in Path of Radiance, that was the last time he ever leveled speed.
Yeah.
Ever.
He has gotten speed since, but it took a while. It's like there was a big period that went from Path of Radiance to Radiant Dawn where he didn't got speed.
Yeah, it's like, dude, get speed. And so he's just not doubling anything. I do agree that early crown is probably not the play because even the crown doesn't fix it. Like, it brings him up to 20. No, that's not enough. Like, that's still not enough. Just
Yeah, and then his
honestly,
XP
keep him
gain
lower
is
level
gutted
so that he
as
gets
well.
more EXP. Yeah, just get more EXP, I think. So that's pretty much Boyd. I do kind of like the characterization of, pick a few training projects in the Greil Mercenaries. I think like 1 or 2 is probably fine, right? Like,
Yeah.
just a couple guys, especially on hard mode. On normal mode or easy, the EXP cut isn't as massive, so you really can just kind of like devote more EXP to your people. And again, if you're playing on normal or easy, then like by all means, please like have fun with the game, train as many people as you want. This is kind of like we never really stated that this analysis is kind of assuming hard mode, but it is kind of assuming hard mode. Where it's like, yeah, you just don't have the EXP to level up everybody, all these people all at once. Just pick a guy, pick your favorite, and then they'll be the investment target. And Boyd is fine as an investment target. Like, once he gets XP, once he gets speed, he's totally fine.
For sure. Anything else? Or we move on to the next one?
Don't really have much else to say other than the supports. I do like to get the Boyd Myth support for the Spirit Dust.
Oh, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, I'm not always training mages, so I'm not sure what the Spirit Dust would be for. Do you have like someone in mind for that, or is it just I like Spirit Dust?
I don't know. I usually give it to one of the people in late game, like Sonic-y.
Oh yeah,
I guess it's a nice give.
I mean, it's +2 like damage. Can't go wrong with that.
It's pretty good. I'll take it.
I'll take it.
It's okay. And that's pretty much. I don't use Boyd late game much though, but like for your plans where you're like, yeah, I want to use Boyd late game, probably giving him a stronger support is better than getting Spirit Dust. I agree.
Yeah, because Boyd is someone who can really profit off of just being free to go wherever he wants and kill enemies, and Mist doesn't really want to be near those kind of scenes. It's kind of, she doesn't like looking at dead enemies, I think. Or she might not like dying. One of those two things is probably true. Alright, Oscar. Oh yeah, I remember Oscar. He's on my bench right now.
Boy. Oh boy.
Oh boy. Yeah, Oscar is like, he kind of got stuck in late game Path of Radiance where he doesn't kill anything. He's still stuck in that mode. I do think Oscar has his moments in Radiant Dawn that he's pretty good. I mentioned a couple times already that early game he can kill mages by himself, and that's pretty useful. But other than that, he doesn't double enough or 2-hit KO enough to be super viable, so it really just comes down to the horse. And the horse also comes with drawbacks. Most maps, the horse is better than no horse, but there's some maps where having the horse is really bad, like 3-4 and 3-7. And that just further cuts into the amount of maps where Oscar can be really helpful. And when your combat stats are this iffy, it's kind of in trouble. His combat isn't like terrible. Like, we're not talking Soren or Mist or... Honestly, he's also faster than Boyd. I should give him credit where it's due. But he does have issues 2-rounding, and he does have some doubling issues every now and then. Depends on the enemy type. So he has some issues there, which is unfortunate because Oscar would be a really good support partner for people in the long term. He has the Earth Affinity just like Ike, so someone like Mia would really appreciate Oscar as a support partner, but when enemies attack Oscar, they usually don't die, and that is fine early on when you just need enemies to get, ganked up by some of your units, but when there's a need for one-round KOing, Oscar just kind of falls apart, and it's like, why am I using this unit when I could just have exposed them to, I don't know, Har or Ike or Nyla or, Gatrie who started doubling or Boyd who started doubling, depending on when in the game we're talking. So that's been usually my issue with Oscar. He is someone that you could consider crowning because one of the things holding him back is his tier 2 cap. I think his tier 2 speed cap is like 23, 24-ish. Whereas if you cap him, or when you promote him at that point, he's get 25, which is enough to double for a while. And then he probably keeps doubling until like part 4 or so. And then he just have the strength issue to deal with. I think you can probably get into 2-hit KO like some enemy types. Like you might be able to get warriors at some point, for example, or like paladins with a horse slayer. But he's gonna like run into a wall at some point. He's never one-round KO in generals. He is never doubling swordmasters. He's just gonna like kill enemy sages. And that's generally going to be it, which is not really enough for me. But I do appreciate that he doesn't have like terrible speed to the point where he gets doubled. He does have the strength to at least 2-hit KO mages, and he does have the bulk to survive. So he's kind of like a He's got good all-around stats, but none of them are good enough to fulfill like one specific purpose, which is where usually that means I bench him at some point. But I don't think he's bad. I just think he's very middling in this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely would describe him as like mid. It's just that's him all around. And I think it was on a prior unit analysis, maybe the Dawn Brigade one, where I did say that I really like it when a unit has at least one stat that's like way above the curve, right? Because then like there's something you can do with that unit, right? There's something you can play off of. There's something that you can come up with in order to make this unit excel. But with Oscar, he doesn't have anything. So like, what do you do with a unit who, as you said, like doesn't double, who doesn't one shot, who doesn't one round? His bulk is like there-ish, I guess, but like again, what do you really do with this unit? And I do think like in general, mounted utility is probably like the worst in this game out of any unit that has both like mounts and the rescue command.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really not great in this game, the mounted utility. So it's kind of hard for me to come up with ways to justify using Oscar. Even times when I've trained him, and I have trained him up a few times, he just ended up being like so terrible because he just didn't do anything. None of his stats were high. He was just so terrible. I bench him anyway. Like I bench a Silver Knight in like part 3.
Yeah.
I'm like my other units are better than this still. So it's really kind of tragic. I do think he's like kind of a fun benchmark test for like, oh, you take this other random unit, are they better than Oscar? No. So I think there is one kind of funny comparison where I realized his base stats are pretty similar to like base Valencia, and that really made me think of Valencia much less. So, I was like, wait a minute, you're kind of crap. Get out of here.
I remember you mentioned that. Yeah, I think if I had to use Oscar in a playthrough, like someone put a gun to my head or like I drafted him or something, I would try to set up like a triangle attack playthrough where I just try to do as many of those as I can, because that's like the one thing that stands out from Oscar, I think. It would also give me an excuse to use Rolf again and Boyd for fun. And then you can support Oscar and Boyd, which is probably a pretty optimal combo. They build supports faster than most units because I think they have like a faster support building type together. And Earth X Fire is good for both of them. Like Oscar wants some more attack and Boyd just wants the avoid. So if I had to make them work, I would probably do it like that. But Oscar would still be the weaker link between the two, I think.
Sure. And I wish I could tell you like, hey, here's this one neat trick you can do to activate Oscar. Like I had something prepared for Ike and for Titania and for Mist and for Risk coming up, but this is like I have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sorry, my creativity is not here for this guy. I just have no idea what this guy can do.
Yeah, I think in a way he's just like you just take Ike, you make all stats worse, and in exchange you give him a mount. That's him, I think. Like
yeah, what a treasure.
With Ike, I was like, yeah, this unit has no weaknesses, just a couple strengths, and Oscar is like, well, he's that -4 in every stat basically, or like -5 in every stat, and then he gets the mount instead, which, like you kind of mentioned, is not a very good trade-off. But hey, oh well, at least he looks happy. Next
there
one.
We are. Let's go on.
Let's go on. Shinon.
I think he has transfers.
Yeah, I think this guy might have transfers. That glowing green looks pretty good. What do we transfer, Raisins? What is he normally at for bases?
This is a transfer for skill and speed, and that's it.
That's probably it. Yeah. Okay. So normally 28 skill, right, and 24
speed.
Okay.
Yeah. Such low numbers. Wow.
Yeah.
No.
Such trash. Yeah. Shinon, I think, has stats roughly on par with Ike's, except he's a sniper and he's like less strength, I guess. But really, these stats are all around really good. And I guess they thought, this class is kind of bad. We should probably just give him good stats and see how he fares. And most people really liked Shinon when the game first came out. I personally, before this playthrough, I wasn't a huge fan of Shinon in Radiant Dawn. Path of Radiance is like a different story altogether. We're using him because we used him in Path of Radiance and had so much fun with him. But in Radiant Dawn, at some point the game becomes enemy phase emblem. There's no way around it. Late part 3, and then part 4, and then the first endgame map, they're all basically route missions or close enough where you want to route most of the enemies out of the way, and you really can't afford to just keep piecing together kills. So at that point, Shinon is no longer super relevant just for being like a unit that can kill something on player phase. But early on, when you first get Shinon, he is arguably your like second best unit probably, because besides Ike, who else is one round KOing? Shinon doesn't one round everything, but he's pretty close because he has the killer bow, boosted crit. Like right here, he's listed 55 crit for some reason. It's quite insane.
Yeah.
That means that in a double attack, he's like killing something more often than he's not killing something. And you can also give him Adept to augment that if you want to. And then most units are not one-running on enemy phase anyway. Like, even Ike struggles with that sometimes. And if you go below Ike, you have like Titania who's not doubling, Boyd who's not doubling, Gatrie who's not doubling. So you're not left with many options. Mia, I guess, is doubling, but you needs like a proc to kill too. So Shinon is like one of your best offensive options sometimes, and it's great. So he just... One of the first things I usually do in early part 3 is just move Shinon and see if he kills his target, because that gives me information on what to do with the rest of my units. And if he does, that's a huge relief to everyone else. So that's really nice. And then I found some new, I don't want to say new tech, but something neat in this playthrough that made me enjoy Shinon a bit more, which is the Shade Provoke combo I mentioned earlier, where you put Shade on Shinon, and you give his Provoke to Gatrie in this case, his support partner, and then Gatrie pulls enemies in and fights some enemy phase, and Shinon avoids them. And usually it doesn't always work, because enemies will prioritize not getting countered, even if, they attack a Shade target. But I would just give Shinon a crossbow through a trade, and then suddenly he has one range, Gatrie has one range. They're like, okay, might as well attack Gatrie because he's Provoke. And they kind of got around it. It does require, it does restrict both characters a little bit, but I find it better than having Shinon move away from enemies because I didn't want him to get attacked, or having to protect him with like units all around, build a wall around him. It made him a little bit more free to use, which is what I really enjoy. Which is, I gotta say, this is more of a way to fix Shinon's weakness than it is something to make Shinon actually good, because it's still not great to only attack once per like full turn cycle. But it made him a little bit more manageable. And then he still has the end game to look forward to, with the double bow and 3 range with the marksman and stuff. We gave him a crown this playthrough too, just to be funny, and he's just like wrecking everything with Deadeye everything, and then getting 3 range attacks, shooting like from far away. It's been a blast. Shinon's stats are fun to use. He's a very fun unit to use. I enjoy using him a lot, and he's got good stats. So if you want a sniper with good stats, he's like brain dead easy person to pick. I wouldn't recommend crowning him. That was more of a funny pick. I do think he's just like good enough at base without a promotion to just get the job done as a sniper whenever you need to. But yeah, hella fun. Would recommend. Like him a lot more than I used to. What about you?
Yeah, I do think, again, though, as a crown candidate, he's not really as good. It's kind of easy enough to get him to 21 by the time that I really need something like that. And it's also like, as you kind of mentioned, the time when he naturally could promote into 21 is also kind of the time when a sniper who just like kills a dude each player phase is no longer as good. The 3 range is kind of nice for a few maps. I'm thinking of like 311 in particular is a map where I really do like having the 3 range, because like there's so many obstacles in that map that having the flexibility is kind of handy, in my opinion. But that's like kind of just a bonus thing you can do. Or actually, it's kind of a big picture thing. Is like, hey, is this unit worth continuing to use or worth continuing to bring? And I do think with the Shade Provoke tech, I mean, both of those skills are like so low contest, right? That like you might as well use it for some kind of thing like that, right? Like if I wasn't doing Shade Provoke with Shinon and someone else, I'd probably do it with another guy who's exactly like Shinon and just cannot counterattack an enemy phase for whatever reason.
Yeah, it might be like handy for like, I don't know, if you're doing Ike Soren, maybe something similar to that could work as well. But
I guess so, yeah, that'd be like, pretty good.
It's one of those things where if you test it, you're probably risking like a death on someone, whereas Shinon is not going to die if he gets attacked.
Yeah, because Shade and Provoke, like, we kind of know what they do, but we also kind of don't know what they do, right? Like, we know how it changes the enemy priorities, we just don't know how those priorities are weighted. And so, like, I still don't quite think anyone is able to understand. And like, if you give them a Radiant Dawn screenshot and say like, can you tell me for a fact who the enemies will attack, I don't think anyone's able to do that right now. But going back to Shinon, so you kind of mentioned Killer Bow and Iron Bow. I think one thing I do straight away is just trade over Rolf Steel Bow. I mean, come on, like Shinon just uses it way better.
Sure.
Shinon Steel Bow actually like one-rounds some things. Like I understand you can do it with a crit with a Killer Bow, but there are sometimes when you just has the might to do it with Steel Bow. And so I do really prefer using that. That's pretty much the only thing. Other than that, I think the bases speak for themselves. Yeah.
I think in Ignorance, I think I did eventually trade around the Iron and Steel. I think in Ignorance, it's kind of hard to tell if he's going to two-shot something or not, so I would just go with Killer Bow by default. But I did make that trade eventually, especially when I benched Rolf. Like, all right, I might as well take your Steel Bow for my own use.
Yeah.
And then in 3-2, you just give him a 4 Steel Bow just to like make sure he can 2-hit KO things. And eventually he gets a Silencer, and he just has the might to 2-hit KO like most mid-tier enemies like Halberdiers and Paladins and stuff like that. You don't really have to worry about crits anymore. Like the crit reliance is mostly 3 Prologue, 3-1 IMO.
Yeah, I mean, those maps are really weird for the Greil Mercs because like your inventory sucks.
Yeah.
So like everyone sucks.
Except Shinon and Ike.
There you go. Except Shinon and Ike, apparently. Yeah, they're the only ones who can like really one round. I guess Titania sometimes. It depends if it's slow. If it's slow, Titania can one round, but otherwise, shaky.
For sure. Okay, I don't know who's next. Let's see who's next. It's Gatrie, of course. Shinon's
Nice.
partner in crime. I really enjoy Gatrie. I've complained already a couple times in this playthrough where I never get to use Gatrie, like bring him to endgame, because either I just neglect using him, like I have trouble picking units in this game. Like I've been recommending, like pick like 1 or 2 units to train, and I would pick them all, and then I have to bench someone. It ends up being Gatrie. And then last time I played this game in an Iron Man setting, I picked Gatrie finally and got him to part 4, and then a Thunder Mage crit him, and he died on that enemy phase because there was honestly too many enemies. It was too risky. I shouldn't have done it, but Gatrie did end up dying to a Thunder Mage. Sucks, because I was really looking forward to using him. But this playthrough, he's still alive and kicking. He's still wrecking everything. And he's doing work. He's being Shinon's, partner in crime. They have, let me see, Light. I think Shinon is Thunder. Yeah, so they give each other full defensive bonuses, which is nice. I mean, you'd think they wouldn't need it because their defenses are both so good, but they have some... It's nice against mages for Gatrie especially. Stop them from getting killed with that. Because that's like Gatrie's only defensive weakness besides hammers is mages. Everything else about Gatrie is pretty good. He's got high HP, he's got really high defense. His strength is really powerful. He like 2-shots things. He's got more strength than Boyd at base. His speed is surprisingly high in this game. 20 base is like, sure, it's kind of crap, but he caps it quickly, so then he can Bex his other stats. And then if you can crown him, you can afford to give him a crown, then his speed becomes kind of good, because I think it caps at like 23, 24, 25. Crown him goes up to like +2 dat. And then suddenly he's in doubling territory and just kind of roughly stays that way for part 3, part 4. There might be like a little bump in doubling if he stops like gaining XP faster than enemies grow, but I think by the time you get to part 4, you could probably at least double enemy generals and slower enemies, and just kind of mow through enemies, because his stats are so good. Like, I remember discussing him with Donan for my tier list review. He was like, Donan was like, I just gotta say, Gatrie's stats are just really, really good. He just murks everything. He just destroys like entire maps by himself if he can get there. The mobility is a problem. He does need like a dance or a rescue drop, or just a little bit, slow down the pace a little bit to keep up, because he only has 6 move, and someone like Ike or Mia will usually have 7. So he can fall behind a little bit, but if you're like routing a map, you can probably afford to send a 6 move unit in one direction, and they can probably, get things done in time for it not to cost you any bonus experience. So in that way, I think his mobility is sufficient. If you're going to be a general in a game with big maps, I think this is a pretty good way to do it, is just have really good stats and destroy everything. But he does really appreciate your Greil Mercenary training project slots, and he does really appreciate your Master Crown. So he's not completely devoid of the need of resources, but he makes damn good use of them, and he is like a really good candidate for them. What about you?
Yeah, this is really the guy. When I'm thinking about like moving the Paragon over from the Dawn Brigade to the Greil Mercs to train up like a pet project, it's always Gatrie. Like, this guy is, I mean, his stats are just ridiculous. So as kind of like a quick point of comparison, right? You have like a very popular, probably the most popular other like Lance General in this game, or just General really in this game, is like Tarneo, right? Because it's like, oh, Tarneo is so good. You like crown him, you wing him, and then he just like devours all these maps. Gatrie is 4 levels under Tarneo, and like all of his stats are better, like just better, right? I think he's tied in speed, and he's 4 points under in skill. Oh no, what a tragedy, right? But like everything else is actually just better than Tarneo. And so like, as far as mid-game prospects, like these stats are good enough to be like not taking damage from things, and like I think 20 is actually enough to double like a few enemies. I don't really want to say like a few enemies, because now that someone's going to pull up the stats and be like, oh, it doesn't double anything. Okay, but 21 for sure, right?
Yeah.
And you say, oh, he has to level speed. He has a monstrously high like 60% speed growth. Like, just get him a level, or if you even a bonus XP level, I think is actually like pretty favored to give him speed. So like, just give him literally anything, and now here he is. He's off to the races. He can use lances and axes, which are both excellent weapon types in this game, especially the axes, right? In fact, I think there's like kind of something to be said for trading over one of these hand axes or short axes to him in these earlier maps, and then once you get the silver card, you just buy him a bunch of axes, and he's only using axes for the rest of the game, right? But he's just got really good stats, kind of as you and as Don said, and then level him up even a couple times, and now his speed is high enough to be doubling. I do think he's a fine candidate for Master Crown or even for 21ing with Paragon. And then at that point, you do actually get past the issue of Lance General having kind of a crap speed cap. I'm normally not one to really like pay attention to caps that much, but in this case, I think the speed cap really is like super relevant. And like promoting just to get past that cap is pretty important because then you do start doubling a lot of enemies of part 3. Like 25 speed, come on, that's monstrous for part 3. That's so much. Like at that point, you really are just kind of doubling everything that you need to be fighting in this. And then you level up speed again, you level speed again. You eventually hit the 29 speed cap in Marshall, but like, come on, at that point, you've already killed everything in part 3 and in part 4.
Yeah.
So like, who cares?
At that point, everyone is dead. Who cares?
Yeah. At that point, oh no, you can't level your speed to kill all these enemies that don't exist anymore. Like, you're totally fine. He's got some crazy good stats. Probably like best armor in this game, except for like, you know, Taraneo is kind of a good armor by convenience, but this guy is like, he's just ridiculously good.
Yeah. Like, real quick, I just want to talk about the Bex level for a second, because I looked up his growth real quick myself, because I don't have him on screen yet. And he has 60% growth in strength, speed, and defense, so those are his highest growth. So if you give him a Bex level, there's a good chance he gets those 3, and that's really good for a Bex level, just getting strength, speed, defense. What more could you possibly want?
Yeah.
And then it lines up so well with his caps in tier 2, because for example, his HP is 1 away from capping, so it's only 50% growth, but if you take that out of the picture, your chances of getting the other stats with bonus experiences increases a lot. Similarly, strength is 2 away from capping. If he caps that, he's much more likely to get speed and defense, as well as something like, I don't know, skill, I guess, if you want that. Skill is like, well, it's 7 away from capping. The biggest cap that he's probably never going to hit is actually defense with like 30. That takes a lot to cap, but he can still do it in tier 2 just because his growth is so monstrous and his other stats are going to cap out earlier. So you do have to, like, at some point you have to crown him, obviously, to get out of the cap problem, but it's also just super easy to patch up any weak points that he might have somehow. It's just so good.
I do think this is the Greil Mercenaries unit for whom caps matter the most. Right? Everyone else, like, if they hit a stat cap, it's like, okay, well, your stat is just so ridiculously high that, like, yes, theoretically it can't grow, but also you're just devouring everything. This unit is actually, like, kind of somewhat held back by his caps.
Yeah.
I think.
It's a little bit different from, like, Oscar and Soren, who are just, like, bad, and then they also have bad caps.
Yeah, this one's, like, bad cap. But also he's really high level, and it's very easy for him to overcome that, right? So.
Yeah, true. Having just... The caps just stop him from being a monster. He just has his own niches, regardless of whether you crown him or Bexman or whatever. But then you can also make him even better. Whereas for Soren and Oscar, they just need some of those resources to get out of the hole in the first place.
Yeah.
All right.
That's basically all I have to say about Gatrie.
Yeah, that's we've praised him enough, which I didn't know was possible, but here we go. I think we have like, what do we have left? We have 2 left. Okay. So we got Rhys. This can probably be short because we talked about staves a lot with Mist, and almost everything we said about Mist applies to Rhys too. Or I should say Rhys, because that's his name. So what there is to Rhys is, like, he has some differences with Mist. He can attack from 2 range with L-Lights, which actually hits res, so that's a little bit better. His magic is way better, so his chip is stronger, and his range with Physic and I think Rescue are bigger that way. His speed is even worse, to the point where I think Rhys is the unit that's been alive in my Iron Man like playthroughs for the shortest total amount of time. I think he died on turn 1 enemy phase. So he's so bad. It's the Dawn Brigade would, I mean, okay, so he is faster than some Dawn Brigade units at base, but not that much faster. His res is good at least, so he can survive a mage, but everything physical just one-rounds him basically. Enemies in part 3 will generally have 18 or more speed. He just dies that way. I do appreciate the faith developers had in him though by giving him a concoction of all items, you know, because Rhys is definitely going to survive a round of combat. But yeah, healing is, like, it's nice. He's a good user of Physic, if you can give him that without him dying. He's good chip, and there's some things you can do in part 4 at base level, like I think you can rescue someone up a ledge turn 1 if you're smart and you kept them alive, you deploy them in the right map, like for 4-4. I think that is helpful, but that's like it. There's not much else you can really do with Rhys that isn't just good staff flunky with high magic, and you just keep clear of enemies at all times and he'll be fine. But I've never been able to keep Rhys alive very well. He's just so fragile, and the reward for that is that the class has a bad, like, end game as well. Just the caps for both Bishop and Saint are just not very good, and if you're unlucky, you even get infected by his tier 3 skill as well. It's just not very fun.
That one.
Yeah, that one.
Well, what is it? It's Corona for.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah.
It exists.
It exists.
You know,
It definitely does exist. It's definitely one of the skills of all time.
It procs, that's for sure. But
Yeah. Okay. He's got basically nothing. I got nothing for Rhys. What about you?
yeah, I got nothing either. I mean, like, get the physic from part 2, and now he's like a little bit better. That's about it. This L light, I really don't think it's worth giving him any other tome ever. Like, this L light is totally fine. You're never gonna break it. And then, yeah, just trade the concoction away. Maybe give him a physic. That's pretty much all I can think of to use with this unit.
Yeah, that's your kit. That's your Rhys customization kit right there.
Yeah, wow. Again, make your unique unit here, right? There's maybe a case to be made for trading the Mend over to Mist, because he does actually have a lot of magic, and healing for 33 is like enough for most members of the Greil Mercs. Right? Like, it's enough to get Titania to full every time, right? So
yeah,
like,
sure. I mean,
you might as
Titania
well
has
trade
like
it over.
low HP too, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, you heal for 33. That's enough, right?
Yeah, it's enough.
Come on,
It's enough.
that's plenty.
Yeah, I do appreciate that this game just lists how much how much you heal. I think a lot of games just don't do that. Gotta say, props to them for.
Oh
saying
yeah,
that.
no. Yeah, please, thank you. It's
Thank you.
really nice.
All right, shall we do a more
Just
exciting
have a-
unit for last but not least?
Yeah, let's do Mia. Let's do Mia.
Yeah,
Rhys's nemesis.
Right.
Right.
Nemesis. A fair fight, a good matchup for sure. Definitely not sure who to put my money on there. I adore using Mia. I use her almost every time I play this game because she's both good and has good unit feel. It's not a rare combination, but it is a fun one. Mia is like Shinon. She doubles enemies in part 3 early on. She does not have the strength to two-shot most things early on, but she does get high crit. So we can use the Wodao or just her innate crit, or you can give her Adept. And if she procs that, then she probably kills the enemy, and then they're dead. So Mia and Shinon usually the first people I move just to get maximum information before figuring out ways to get rid of other enemies. Particularly in 3-1, this is one of the things I enjoy the most about Radiant Dawn. Just figuring out, early Greil Merc stuff. And then from there, usually in 3-2, I forge Mia a Force Steel Sword with some crit on it that lasts her like most of part 3. This will let her like 2-shot some things that are more frail, and then 3-shot things that are not frail, and then they will probably die anyway because she has so many chances to either crits or adepts or, some other shenanigans. She also has innate Vantage, which usually I don't care about innate skills too much because they tend to be on units that don't use them optimally, like Adept on Soren. But I think Vantage is not much reason to take it off of Mia because it's not a very good skill. It activates randomly, which means it's not reliable for anything. But for someone like Mia, who's already throwing RNG at enemies anyway to try and kill them, having an extra way to get lucky is just nice. Like, if an enemy attacks her up close and she procs Vantage, then there's also a good chance she just crits them or adepts them or, one of those other things she can do. And then they might die before they get to attack, and now you don't have to dodge an attack. And then long-term, Mia is just good because she's like so close to capping her speed and skill. I'm just going to pull them up real quick for myself just to see how far away she is. So she's 2 away from capping speed right now. This is no transfers, by the way. I didn't use Mia on Path of Radiance. And 4 away from skill. And she's only level 7, so her growths in those are pretty much the highest she has. 60 skill and 65 speed. So she'll get them, not every time, but like 2 out of 3 times she'll get those. So eventually you'll have a capped speed Mia. And then soon after you'll probably have a capped skill Mia. And then her highest growths are HP at 70, strength at 45, and defense at 40. Which means whenever you Bexp her with skill and speed capped, you have really good chances of getting either strength or defense or both. And in my experience, it's usually like the later half of part 3. And that can patch up her stats so nicely. And in part 3 late, you get a lot of Bexp anyway, so it just synergizes well with how the game is made. And it makes her a good long-term unit. Like I said before, I enjoy supporting her with Ike. But if lacking that, maybe Oscar is not a good candidate, because the Earth Affinity stacks well with her Natural Void to just make her so hard to hit that it becomes reliable. At some point she'll hit tier 3, you get Astra as an extra chance to proc at things. Basically, Mia is a character that just uses the RNG to her favor in a lot of different ways. Like, all these things sound unreliable, but combined, they just work out really well almost every time. I say that, I did lose Mia at some point to bad RNG, so
well,
I'm not gonna pretend it happens. Okay, so bad RNG and my own hubris, my own overconfidence in her ability to KO something, but it can happen. That's like the one scary thing. It's like she can still face crit from enemies despite the 18 luck, but that's a problem she shares with most other units. It's just that Mia doesn't have the defense to survive a crit, so I guess that is a big problem for her. But I mean, it's gonna happen every now and then. If you're not playing an Iron Man, you know, it's a inconvenience. It's an inconvenience.
Yeah, let's not go on too much about like what you should have done or should not have done, right? Like, you know, Mia can die. Anyone can die.
Mia can die. Mia is mortal, but she is a very good mortal unit. I enjoy using her a lot, and I think with the right resources, she's one of the better units on the Grillmercs. That's my summary of Mia. What about you?
Yeah, I do think so. You know, we kind of mentioned like pick a unit to train up, and I'm kind of a fan of doing Paragon on Gatrie and training him up, but Paragon on Mia honestly is probably much better, especially if you're playing growths. I mean, so like, let's start with her speed. Okay, 28 speed, that doubles like basically everything except Part 4 Swordmasters.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you're already off to a pretty good start, and then with the promotion, it's 30 speed, like. And that's on 0% growth sprain, right? Like if you're playing with growth, she's easily gonna have 32 speed by the time she promotes, and then she actually does just double everything, right? I do really appreciate mentioning the bonus XP technique in order to bring up her strength. It is pretty important because frankly 17 strength is kind of low.
It is.
But the fact that you can bring it up and you can fix it is like pretty important. Now, Mia has like basically one problem ever, and that is that the starting inventory for 3P and 3-1 is just like unsalvageably bad. Like there's nothing you can do. Wodao's Steel Sword and Ike's Iron Sword, like even with other guys, at least you can like trade command a better inventory. But with Mia, like the Greil Mercenary swords are like just absolute poverty mode here. Like they have nothing good. There's nothing good in this army, and so like you're only working with this problem for a short while. It can make Mia seem bad because like she just has no good options. But in the moment 3-2 comes around, like trust me, just give her a Forged Steel. Or give her a Steel Blade even. A Forged Steel is probably better. And now she like is actually fine. She can actually do 1-2 range combat with the Wind Edge. With the Forged Steel, she actually probably does one round a lot of things. Even if Support Affinity gives her plus attack. There's so many good things about Mia. Like I really would rate this, like you said, as one of the like better units in the Greil Mercs. Just because like, I mean, she doubles everything, and her offense, her low attack is so easy to fix. Right, like if you're playing 0%, it's kind of hard. But like with growth, she just takes off. Right, like just give her a Forged Steel. It's easy to give her a Forged Steel, and now she's just one rounding everything totally fine. Like absolutely amazing unit. She just has this awkward start where like, frankly, there's nothing that can be done to fix the start. Just deal with 2 maps of a really cringe Mia, and then you're off to the races.
Yeah, I don't even find the Wodao that terrible. Like it looks bad because the attack power is low at 7, but at the same time, I find that. You know, yeah, sure. Let's say Mia like fights a Halberdier and somehow like a crit plus hit doesn't kill because the Wodao is that cringe. But they could probably have Rolf finish off or something, like Mist or Soren or something. Because I usually have actions available to get a kill somewhere, so I don't find it too bad. But it is long term a really horrible weapon, and whatever like 10 uses I have left of it after like 3-1 is just go straight to the armory. Like I just sell it straight off because it's so garbage after that.
It's such a crap weapon. It's like worse than a Killing Edge, which I know like. Being worse than a Killing Edge is not something that you should think about in 3P and 3-1 because you don't have a Killing Edge, so like what does that matter? But it feels really bad just having this like super crap inventory, right? Like it's unfixable.
It's fair because like killing weapons aren't even that good in this game to begin with. Like the killer axe is good because it's like an axe. It's not that good, period.
It's like the killer weapons are okay, but like this Wodao, come on, it's such rubbish.
Yeah, I think I just like Mia too much to hate the Wodao, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it's I mean I feel like if you use the Steel Sword, you still get less kills overall. I think the Wodao is still like the best option you have. But yeah, it is a cringe inventory. I agree with that point for sure.
It's kind of weird. Our perspectives are like completely reversed. Like I hate the Wodao too much that I probably overhate Mia, and you love Mia so much that you probably overlove the Wodao.
It's true. It's true. I just enjoy to get them finally figuring out how to make Swordmasters and Snipers good. I just don't know why I haven't done it since.
There you go. Hey, crit plus 20 is kind of good. Hey, come on, they were good in some other games.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway.
True. Anyway, I don't remember what time I said at the beginning of the video, but I do think it was 1 hour or something, and that's what we're at right now. So we can probably call it quits there. That's the Greil Mercenaries for you. Let me know in the comments what you think. Next time, we are going to discuss the other units that are in part 3. That will include all those Lagoos we recruit, so like the Hawks and the Huron, Raisins, and all those cats and tigers that you get, including Leith and Mordecai, we forgot in our part 2 review, so be on the lookout for that. I'm kind of almost glad we have them there, because that means we can just throw them in with Ranulf and just talk about Lagoos in general. And honestly, part 3 is more of their joint time anyway. Like, it's more of their availability anyway, so I think it makes sense. And Tanith and Sigrun as well will be there, of course. And I think that rounds them all out, right? That's it? Lagoos and Pegasus Knights, I think?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. The Crimean Royal Knights we've already done, so
Yes.
I think that's basically everybody.
Yeah, sounds about right. Well, Raisins, this has been fun, but we gotta go. So
It's been a treat. See you next time.
see you next time.